Welcome to the quick introduction on Android Wear. The talk of the town today is on devices like Android Wear launched by Motorola and a couple of the hardware manufacturing vendors. Uh, Here we're going to see what exactly are these devices, what is the peculiarity of the platform on which this is running, and more deeper, what are the user experience principles or ideology which you should keep in mind when you are designing or developing applications for these wearables. If you see the evaluation pattern on how could this industry, how could these devices impact the industry. So one of the criteria, one of the most important factor which needs to be considered is the user experience. Typically, when you have devices with such a small form factor, and moreover, the availability of user interaction space is limited compared to a smartphone or a 7-inch tab or a 10-inch tab. Here, the space of user interaction is limited. So, user experience plays a major role in deciding the success of these kind of products as well as the apps that are being built on top of it. So we'll dig deeper on what are the principles or ideology that has to be kept in mind when you design an application for this Android wearables. To start with, if you see the evolution of this kind of products or this particular platform, it started with the desktop application years back, and slowly there was a migration or a gradual change from desktop application to smartphones when platforms like Android and iOS slowly gained the pace and market share. So people were busy working out or building the applications which they already had as desktop applications, migrating them to on a platform for smartphones. Because most of the people, if you see the interaction time, the time they get engaged with their smartphones is much larger than the time they generally used to engage in their desktops or laptops. So it gained pace, it gained momentum, and it made complete sense to build applications for the smartphone environment and tabs particularly as well. Slowly, if you see, there is a gradual change when the health conscious people, when they wanted some devices that could monitor their daily workout pattern, their information gathering on the tips on how to be healthy, stay healthy and all, and to monitor their health behavior, their workout behavior and all, there was a demand for products which could do two sides of the need, which is basically to update information to educate the end user on the health benefit tips as well as get feedback and get queries on the best tips to maintain be healthy and to provide them on an instant. So if we take a typical example, a user A who is really conscious about health and who wants to maintain his workout pattern, his exercise pattern to be monitored and scheduled. It is difficult to have, or it is pretty much difficult to use it along with a smartphone. A smartphone can provide the solution, but the problem is it is not really in real time solution. Unless and until the user launches an application in smartphone, you don't have get an update. So that's where a need for devices that could be used by the user anytime, but at the same time it doesn't create an heaviness for the user to carry it. That's when the idea of wearables came in. When similar like a watch, you carry your wristwatch wherever you go and whatever you do, and anytime you want to know the time, you just have a look into it. That is a simple concept that has been built in the Android wearables, but additionally, along with time, it provides you more information and it is ready to help you out in more circumstances. That is the core principle of Android wearables. So let's move on. So what is this Android wearables or these devices? So these provide information that moves along with you. Wherever you go, you get these updates information in these wearables, in these devices. So these are small, powerful devices worn on the body, typically on your wrist, like a watch, and they provide the information when you need it the most. So you're traveling, you're trying to catch your flight to San Francisco, and that's when you get an update on your wristwatch, on your Android wearable, saying that the flight has been delayed by half an hour. So you don't have to log into your mobile app to know that. it's typically broadcasted to your wearable, and just as you look your time, you get a small notification in your Android wearable stating that your flight has been delayed by half an hour. So it provides you information when you need it the most, and you don't have to follow up with an app to know it. It also provides you an option to ask intelligent questions, and these devices has the capability to get through an internet connectivity. They can provide you responses to your questions that you're asking. So as a user, I can ask what is the typical weather in San Francisco where I'm heading to, and it does a Google search and lets you know what is the current temperature, the weather forecast for the day, and how it's going to be for the week. This is typical examples on how you can use this Android wearables, but not limiting to. So as I said initially, this can provide you tools or apps, wearable apps, which can help you to reach your fitness goals easily. So this is basically in one shot, it's a key to your multi-screen world. You have your entire gadgets in your gadgets list, your smartphone, tabs, smart laptops and all. But this is the key to your multi-screen world. It's always with you, it travels along with you, and it provides you the information at the right time. What is this all about? So here if you see a smartphone compared to a desktop application, smartphones render the limited data, and moreover the data that is most required for the user at the moment. Wearables take the next level, where in which only the critical information is being broadcasted to you, and only the critical data is being rendered at the screen. So there is no information overload, and there is no information being pushed to your devices, pushed to you on your screen, where you have a lot of crowded data being shown. It's all very limited data that's being displayed in these screens. And modes to take user inputs. If you see a smartphone app, you can type in your data, or you can do a voiceover with your data. So you should be having a QWERTY keyboard, or you have an inbuilt on-screen keyboard where you can enter the data, which is typically fine for a smartphone. But if you see a device like Android wearables where you have a limited screen size, it doesn't really make sense to have a inbuilt keyboard there. So here if you see, the user inputs are taken either through a voice command, or you have a limited actionable buttons like the G which you're seeing in the screen. So the G is a small spot or icon which you see in the screen, and you're tapping on it, it will take you to a search page where you can voice over and give your search input, and it does the Google search and render the results for you. So this is it all about, and it works on two basic principles or two basic modes of operation, basically suggest and demand. So what this suggests about? So suggest is basically a mode of operation in which this device gives you suggestions based on your need. So these are all displayed in terms of card view. So you can develop applications meeting with a kind of a card view where you're pushing information to the end user as cards. It's not a typical long text web page or a screen page which you're seeing, but short and small cards which is just going to give them initial and just require the information. Today, take a typical example. If you receive mails on your Gmail, which has a long text and all, this wearable will just pop you out one card at a time, and this card is just going to have data about the sender as well as the subject of the message or a one-liner of the content. So if you're really interested to know what exactly this message on the fly, then probably you can either tap on it and get to the details, but ideally it's just popping out information that you have received a message or a mail which has this kind of information. So it's informing you, and now it's up to you to choose where do you want to see the message, through a smartphone, through a tablet, or through a laptop. But information is already being passed to you that you have a message ready to be read. And these cards, if you see, are kind of arranged in tiles, and you can see one card at a time, so there is no information overload. And in the interaction wise, if you see, you can typically vertically swipe these cards to view the next card. If you want to see a next mail, you're swiping this card mail vertically, and you're going to see the next mail that has come into your inbox. And also you can swipe horizontally to remove the card. So you are removing or deleting the card. It's just the card, not the mail, but I would say. So it's like notifications. If you want to delete this notification card, you can swipe it horizontally and remove the card. So these are the points which you have to make sure that when you're building an app for Android wearables, these are the typical interaction that is being provided by Google, and these are the typical expectations on how your app for Android wearables should work. The other mode is demand mode, wherein which as a user you can ask or you can seek the support of this Android wearable for data. So you can search for data through voice input, or you have some typical clickable points, very limited clickable points on the screen where you can click on that and find the data which you need. So to take a typical example of a Android wearable Motorola device, you can speak, just go Google. So go Google is the keyword that would open up a list of options or features that have been displayed. So to search, you just have to say, go Google. And there you have the search screen being rendered, and then you can voice over your search text. It can typically speak out saying that best restaurants nearby, and then that would search for you the best restaurants nearby based on your geolocation and display the results to you. So if you are traveling in a noisy environment and then you don't feel that this is the best to speak out loud in a train saying that go Google, and people would be surprised, hey, what is this guy talking about? In those cases, you just can tap on the G icon if you see on the screen, and that would render the same search screen. So depending upon your circumstances, environment, you can choose to give a voice input or to give a typical tap on the G icon and then give a voiceover input. So applications can use different voice commands. So when you build an application, you can customize your commands and then use it according to your need of your application. So depending on the business objectives, you can define and you can customize all these commands using in Android wearables. Coming to the user experience on Android wearables, so typically these points have to be considered when you convert your business objectives into a product solution for Android wearable. So contextually, these are contextually aware apps which demand very less user inputs. So it's basically kind of an intelligent apps which you're going to build on Android wearables, which is going to push information to the user, and with limited options and limited need for the user to say, okay, this is what I need. So it's all about understanding what the user is doing, what he wants now, and then delivering that data to him. So these devices, if you see, they display the right information at the right time. That is the criticality point to be remembered. As long as you're not pushing in the right information and at not the right time, then these apps may fail. So understanding what exactly is it the user is based on geolocation, what exactly the time, and reading of the data through all the available networks of the user through Gmail, through YouTube, and understanding what is the solution, what is the situation where the user is in, and then pushing the data accordingly. That is the whole crux about these apps. So information, as I said, you don't have enough space or enough room to provide a whole chunk of data information. So this information which you are building in these apps should be short, sharp, and immediate. And as I said, the options for the user to have interactions is literally zero or low or very limited. So keep that in mind when you design apps for Android wearables. So these apps should work like a great personal assistant. So it knows user and user preferences and should act accordingly. And if we have some non-urgent notifications, I'm traveling to the airport to catch a flight to San Francisco, and at this point, it doesn't really matter if you want to let me know what is the what is the share price of a particular item which I have listed down in my options. It is not really critical to know to send me that information at that point, because more important is the data related to my travel. So if it is not non-urgent notification, you can directly the app should be able to add automatically to the card at the end, and once all the critical or the urgent notifications are displayed and user has taken an action, then you can slowly push in this data. On a card, if you see, typically 3 actions are allowed, only up to 3 actions are allowed. So this is all about not overcrowding the user with data and with user actions. on a smartphone device, if you see it, and even if you take an Android app, on a particular screen, you should be having anything between 4 to 10 user actions available on a screen. This is just a generic example, but on if you take a home screen, you have on an Android app, be either any app, travel app or customizable, or an weather app, you have at least 4 to 10 action items in the screen. So compared to that, in Android wearables, you are allowed to make only 3 actions allowed in a card, because you have to limit the data and you have to limit the navigations and interactions when you are building an app for Android wearable. And each of these actions which you are building in the card, it should have an icon and should have a caption. If you want to bring in images to these cards, you can bring in, but that should appear behind the cards in the stream. So you're not, the highlight is on the actions and the highlight is on the data, and in the background you can have images to convey the need. In cases where you want to provide additional content, if required, you can use pages. So pages generally appear right to the main notification card, and if user really wants to know more in detail, he can move over the card to the page. So these are additional stuff, additional stuff which you want to provide to the cards if in case you need to provide. But generally, the basic principle, the rule is don't provide additional content unless and until it's very necessary. Should be limiting your data to the basic information which you can push into a card. So in hands-free mode, if you see the next point, you can have voice replies. But when you say voice replies, since the size of the device and the memory capacity and everything is going to be limited, you should be making sure that the voice reply is not a long one. And when you're dictating it, if you have a longer voice reply, the app should be able to automatically truncate your voice reply and let the user know that, okay, it's been truncated, to make sure that it fits in the bandwidth and fits in the memory capacity of the device. And more importantly than the memory capacity and the bandwidth, it's the experience that really matters. So if you have a reply, if you want to reply, you be it with short reply, because you're working on an Android wearable. Unlike a smartphone where you can send a reply with tons of text or a lengthy audio or video, in wearables you should be just conveying the crux of the message you want to. Let's say I want to tell my friend I'm traveling, I cannot pick up your call, I cannot talk to you now, I will call you later. So in that case, in an Android wearable, you should be limiting it to saying that on travel, call you back. So that's a typical short message which you can render, record and then share across to your connected peers when through an Android wearable. So these points has to be taken care when you develop an application for Android wearables. So if you have any questions, please feel to drop a mail to techbuzz.wordpress.com. You can log into this, you can visit this web page techbuzz.wordpress.com and share your comments there. To read in detail about Android wearables, I would suggest you to go to developer.androidwearables.com, where you have the entire list of functionality that will be supported and the general user experience principles and the design principles there. Thank you.